Pop Gen Fusion!
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Pop Gen Fusion, the podcast that takes generations of pop culture and fuses them all together from different generations, and we'll have a good time with geek culture and all that good stuff. I'm your host, Gary Gibbs II, aka Okami, and my co-host over here.
How you guys doing? Pandy. I am the artist and creator of Go Go Ganzi, and it's episode 4.
Episode 4.
Yeah,
we're getting deep up in this.
Too deep.
And we have a very special guest today in the studio.
Giggle. This is Giggle.
She's used to being behind the camera.
This is
she
true.
Is the producer of Pop Gen Fusion. Mm-hmm. She is also the co-founder of Lair Studios.
Absolutely.
The editor of many properties of Lair Studios and writer as well. We bring to you Miss M.M. Smart.
Hey guys, hey, what's up?
This has been a long time coming to have. Should I just call you M.M. Smart?
All 3 episodes.
AKA
forever.
Michelle.
Yes. I think you can call me by my name. As your wife, I
Yes,
think you can call me by my first name.
That's true. Actually, yeah. It's you know what's funny about that? Because we don't use our names that often.
No, we don't actually. Yeah.
Like babe, right?
Yeah, we just call each other babe.
Like, hey!
It's actually, yeah. I mean, that's like a weird thing too.
Yeah.
When it's normally, like, you know, I have to call you Andrew when there's other people around.
That's true.
So.
That's true. Yes.
But anyways, we're off topic already. Tangent number 1.
Tangent number 1. So we're here to discuss with Michelle here and her journey of being a fan, her start of being a geek, a comic book nerd, as you will, to becoming an anime manga fan, to becoming a co-founder of a manga studio. So when I met, you know, we have an episode 1, we talked the origin story of me meeting Pandy. But when I met Pandy, I didn't meet him alone. I met him alongside his partner here. So I met them both at the same time. And when I met her, she was cosplaying as Dinah from the Black Canary from DC Comics, Birds of Prey.
And I don't mean to cut you off. When I met her, she was cosplaying as Wonder Woman. So this is a professional cosplayer.
Oh no! Let me just say now. Let's just start off right now. I'm not a professional. Because we know so many real professional cosplayers that are like pros at putting together costumes. That was never my thing. I actually prefer to cosplay as characters that are easy to put together because I'm not a cosplayer. Like,
and I don't know if the camera can catch your shirt right here. You got a Justice League of America shirt on. And because, you know, Penny, he met you, she was wearing Wonder Woman. I met her, she was wearing Black Canary. So I'm assuming you are a great DC Comics
fan.
DC Comics fan. I would say I was more of a Marvel fan, but I was really into Batman and things like that. So I was always growing up being both sides. Right. So it would always be weird for me when I used to read the back of the magazine. I used to make mine's Marvel and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
right. Yeah.
So how, you know, you've been a comic fan?
I rep DC all the way. Okay. Well, yeah, and I mean,
I was just gonna say, like, so I was big into Marvel before I met Michelle, and you know, everybody kind of but everybody had this idea about, you know, Superman being kind of like a Boy Scout. And I definitely was one of them until I had a very deep philosophical conversation about that. And it convinced me. I'm like, you know what?
When you have those conversations about the whole Boy Scout and aspects of it, and a person who's a real fan, you can have a deep discussion about it.
Absolutely. No, it was really good.
Shout out to the Sage, friend of mine. He's also a big Superman fan. And he has
shout out to you then. Yeah.
he has those discussions about those things. He's you know. So because of that, how did you feel about so you are a Superman fan?
I am definitely a Superman fan. When I was younger, I used to say Superman was my favorite character. And even now, like when we go to conventions and things and people put me on the spot, because I'm not normally in front of the camera and I'm not like a on the spot kind of girl, sometimes I'll still say Superman's my favorite, but that's not necessarily true. I have kind of a wide range of favorites, but I'm definitely DC all the way. And it's funny because kind of in preparation for the podcast, I was kind of thinking about why I'm a DC fan.
That would be my first question.
Yeah, right. And I was like, because people ask all the time, but I think for me at least, I can't say for other people, but for me, I feel like comic book loves kind of originate with what you grew up with. And in particular, it's almost kind of like your home team, So like I'm from Brooklyn. If you're not a Mets or a Yankees fan, you're not a fan. Right. You know what I mean? Like you're not, like you're a traitor pretty much. And so I grew up, reading DC comic books because of my aunt primarily. My aunt, shout out to Titi Lynn. She's a diehard DC girl too, and she was the one who really influenced me to be into comics from a really young age. And
what is like one of your earlier memories of that? What put you on to? Did she just hand you a comic book one day and you're bored and you over her house, or how do you think that stuff?
Yeah,
you don't remember exactly.
No, I mean it's funny because I have a really strong memory of when I was very young of someone in my family having kind of a crate of comic books, literally. And
it's always that one person.
Yeah, and it was funny because to be honest, I remember my aunt being in that memory, but I don't remember if it was hers because she's very neat and tidy and everything is like. She keeps everything like kind of how I do, like very aesthetically pleasing. Everything's like in a case in its original box, perfect. So that I feel like wasn't hers, but that's my first memory of comic books being really young. So
okay, very cool. Actually, do you remember your first one? Like your first?
My first ever comic book? No, I don't think so. I kind of feel like it must have been something. Not probably golden age, but something really early, because that's why I still have a love for those characters, like the original JSA. I still read the yeah, I mean, I still read the original,
the original okay.
Yeah, I mean,
tell you, she's a real one.
I
thought I was a comic book person, and then she started talking, and I'm like, I don't know what that is.
No, I mean, honestly, the part of it too is that I'm a completist. Like, I need to know every single thing that happened to every single character at all times, and that's very difficult with comic books because you have so many and you have such a range and you have all these different storylines and you have different like Earth 2 versus Earth 1 and you have all these different plot lines. It's impossible to know. Well, I say impossible, it's impossible for me. I've met people at conventions that are that hardcore and know them all, but like that was kind of my introduction into comic books, was like really early kind of stuff. And then, so now I've still kept up with those stories,
Do you, did you get to the point where you were, because obviously when the person's put on to comic books, sometimes through a family member, you kind of able to kind of read for free?
Yeah.
Do you remember a time when you were like, yo, I'm going to start buying them on my own?
Yeah, actually really clearly, definitely in high school. Okay. So I went to a high school in New York City, but then I also went to boarding school for part of the time. So going to boarding school was my first time I had to buy my own stuff because I wasn't around family. Right. I was on my own, but I had some really great friends. And again, it's funny because you and I off camera have spoken about this, how most people, or I think most women, their introduction to comic books doesn't come from other women. Yeah. Mine was. So like my aunt was a huge influence on me, but even in high school, my closest friends in high school were into comics, and one of them in particular, she was a super big Marvel fan, like hardcore. So any Marvel things that I've read over the years really came from her influence. And then another one of our friends was a really big anime fan. She would watch all the episodes of Bleach. And when we were at boarding school, we actually had to, we had like a cutoff time, like a curfew time for like Wi-Fi access. So we would basically pirate all of the episodes and like we like keep them open.
I did not know this.
Yeah. No, we would keep them open each on a separate tab and like try to keep like, you know, stream as many as we can, like download as many as we could at the same time so we could watch them at like midnight, like, you know, when we're not after curfew.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so she would watch. So Bleach was still running at that time, and so she would pirate all of those episodes. And I wasn't into manga and anime. That was never my thing until now, or until more recently. So like that, I didn't get from her, but we would share comic books, and that's kind of why. Like there was a local comic book shop, so we had to like purposefully go into town to like go to the comic book shop. Like it was
very intentional.
Very intentional because we had very restricted access to going into town. So it was like I would write on a Post-it note what I was missing, and I would literally go into the comic book shop and be like, "This is what I'm missing. Do you guys have these?" And again, even there, like the comic book owner, like the comic book shop owner, was like a little mom and pop because the town was really small. He was never rude about us being girls. Like I know a lot of women have had bad experiences with that. I never got that from the shops. I always got that from cons because it would be just other men that didn't know we were really hardcore into it, and they just didn't know us, you know. But
they get real bad.
Yeah, and especially I think too especially if you're cosplaying, and especially if you're cosplaying in not a serious manner, just kind of like as a casual thing. When I started going to conventions, in like, if I had to put a year on it, I think it was probably like 2007 was probably my first convention. It was still kind of in that point when people were, there was not a lot of girls casually going. There was either the real hardcore fans with like the real great cosplays or like booth babes. And there wasn't a lot of in between, you know? So like me and my friends would go, and we were kind of like in an in-between state, and people kind of think, oh, well, and comics were starting to get popular then. They were starting to be the Marvel movies and things. Those were starting up. And so like people would think we were just going because you just watched this movie, you thought Iron Man was cool or whatever. But it was like, no, we've been into this for quite some time.
I think Iron Man is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And which I kind of was like, no, actually, I don't think he's cool. I think
Iron
he's
Man's
lame.
never been cool.
Which, don't come for me. I don't actually feel that way.
I always tell people that the only people before like Robert Downey Jr. was Iron Man, the only people who used to check for Iron Man was Ghostface Killer and my dad.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the only people.
Yeah.
The only people that ever checked was like my dad, because my dad liked Iron Man.
Right.
But and my first experience with Iron Man were VHS tapes, like the old, like really still.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I have a couple of them.
Yeah.
I used to go to Arrow's videos. Shout out to y'all who know who that is. It was before Blockbuster Video.
Oh wow.
So
that's funny.
Mom and Pop. It was a small chain. It wasn't like a mom and pop. It wasn't as big as Blockbuster.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Blockbuster bought them out later.
Oh, that's a
now
shame.
Blockbuster's gone too.
It's happening to this world.
But yeah, so you like a comic book fan. Is there any particular writer or arc that you you really loved? Or
my favorite, well, so like just in general terms, like I love Alan Moore. I think he's an extremely talented writer. And
like the League of Extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean he did Watchmen.
Yeah,
he's done a number of like Justice League comics. He's done all sorts of stuff. There's tons of stuff in his catalog. I also feel like, I mean, there's other ones too, like, what's his name? Miller. Frank Miller.
I've never been a big Frank Miller fan. And I'm like, I know.
I was gonna get his signature at Baltimore, and I forgot all about it once we started working.
You know why? And it's not. He's a good writer. I mean, Dark Knight Returns, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I just don't like. He's a fan of that like really dark.
I hear you. Yes.
Like
yes.
I think he wrote RoboCop.
Yeah.
RoboCop when I watched it as a
Yeah.
child, that joint freaked me out.
Yeah.
No, it was definitely.
I can understand
And
that.
you know the extra swole Batman. And
Yeah.
it's just I don't know. I think he even did the
He did Daredevil too.
the Batman All-Star Batman, which the art was amazing because it was Jim Lee, but then he had that line, "I'm the GD Batman," and
yeah.
which is a joke at this point.
Yeah.
But not to damper on your
Yeah,
Frank
yeah.
Miller. It's just,
No.
It's just that was my
Yeah.
experience.
No, and I get that. And to be honest, I think a lot of times there's writers who write incredible stuff, and then and everyone has their their good and bad of their catalog, and it also depends on what you like. I mean, someone I think can do no wrong, that I would be offended if somebody said it was trash, is Neil Gaiman, but I think he's pretty much universally
The Sandman
loved.
writer, right?
Yes, and that was fantastic, and I know a lot of people. Oh, it's good, man. It's good. I actually reread it before I watched the show. And again, I'm not one of those people that has a problem with the show a lot of time. I'm more optimistic because I kind of look at everything as interdimensional, okay, it's just in a different universe, if it deviates. But I actually felt for an adaptation, for a television version, I thought that was pretty well done.
What about a Superman or the any particular arcs or storylines you remember from?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, some of the best stories are the ones that probably people will say are cliche, but it's because they were the best. I think Death of Superman was an amazing arc. Actually, one of I say more recent, but that's because I'm kind of behind. The Red Sun Superman arc was really great. It kind of showed if he had landed in
Russia,
USSR Russia,
Soviet,
Soviet Russia. That was really good. And then one of my favorite that's not a Superman is Blackest Night. Blackest Night. If you've never read
Blackest Night is awesome.
It's amazing, and I feel
I hear a butt coming.
No. I was thinking about the arc before that led into Blackest Night. Before, when they got, I think when Hal Jordan came back.
Yes.
That whole storyline up into that. And, I'm drawing a blank, but that whole leading to the different Spectrum Wars.
Yes.
The blue. I have a Blue Lantern ring.
I have a couple rings.
Do you know the Green Lantern oath?
Oh yeah. Well, I did. Well,
I'm not trying. I didn't even put you.
Brightest day and blackest night. No evil can something my might. I used to escape my sight.
Those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern's light.
Yeah. I don't remember the whole thing, but
I tried to learn the Blue Lantern one.
Oh yeah, that and I love that one too. And I feel like the shame on me for not.
I was not a Green Lantern fan, at all, my whole life. But that whole arc.
Doing the full spectrum of colors, I feel really added something because they already had Sinestro and the Yellow Corpse. So
they were the only two
for decades, for literal decades. Yeah, and I feel that just added something to the overall storyline, and it was just really impactful. But why I was gonna say shame on me is because my aunt's favorite of all time superhero is Hal Jordan Green Lantern, and she don't rock with Guy Gardner. She don't rock with what's his face, John Stewart. She don't rock with those. She loves Hal Jordan, and I feel
Rayner.
No, she don't rock with Hal Rayner.
When I was a kid, I think. I want to say into my elementary school. That's when Kyle was two things happened. Wally West became the Flash. Barry was gone, and then Kyle became.
I have feelings about that.
And then Kyle became the Green Lantern, and I didn't really know a whole lot about Flash. I mean, I knew the basics of Flash and whatever. There was the old TV show, and then the Justice League stuff. But I was always, as far as I was a Marvel kid, but as far as but I love Batman. The whole Bat family. If you've seen early episodes of Pop Gen Fusion, you saw me wearing a Nightwing hoodie. I love Dick Grayson is one of my favorite characters. I love Tim Drake. I love Jason Todd. Even when my first comic books had Jason Todd as I have a picture with Adam West. I love Batman and Burt Ward who played Robin. So but as far as my Green Lantern knowledge and Flash knowledge, it was like very, very limited.
Yeah.
Like, I knew about Superman or whatever,
Right.
but Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Right.
So
Honestly, I'm in awe with just all this. Because I mean, like, I'm actually embarrassed that I like Batman, but like just
Not like that.
running through all this, I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I mean, even like with Dick Grayson and stuff like that, like I only know him as Robin, but with like the Nightwing thing, I think that's when I kind of stopped, and so
he said, the funny thing about it is
now,
he's been
now
Nightwing.
Wolverine, I can tell you some stories about that. Yeah, so
Here's the thing. I loved Wolverine as a child. Like love.
No, he was very.
As an adult, maybe because he's oversaturated.
I think
now?
because I quickly
I'm like
kind of fell out.
Cyclops was kind of not that bad. No. Read some comics. Like you might Cyclops kind of that dude.
Now X-Force.
Cyclops, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah,
now-
see, that's the difference between now and then. Because
Yeah.
it's like, Cyclops back then?
Cyclops was that dude.
But X-Force Cyclops, like X-Force got busy. You know, like they were straight up like some execution squads and stuff like that. Like so, but yeah, no, I think Wolverine just got too oversaturated. Same thing with like Batman.
Well, see, the problem I have with the Wolverine now is the reason, the appeal to Wolverine, the appeal to Gambit, I think, is that you take this team setting and you throw in a wrench of a loner within the team setting, and that's what makes them special. Because I go where I want to go, you know.
Yeah.
I go where I wanna go.
Or I smoke my cigarettes and my cigar. That's again,
Yeah,
they do
right.
that. They're these lone characters put in
Yeah.
these group settings, so it creates that kind of like dysfunction and that fun. If
Yeah.
everyone was kind of like a soldier, that would be boring, right?
Right.
So that's why I think they were so popular back then. That's why as a kid I was so.
And again, I think it like had, everything kind of goes like, it's just like history. It ends up repeating itself. It's very cyclical comic books. So like before that, they were trying to get away from the Boy Scout and the like, howdy you do of the earlier generation. So then you introduce
The
like,
rise of the anti-hero.
right, the rise, yeah, because you even in the indie space, you had Spawn,
Spawn. I was gonna say Spawn.
right,
Spawn.
and it was funny because
They were renegades.
Right.
The Image were renegades.
Yes. Yeah, and them as people and them and their characters that was trying to give that renegade persona. But it's funny though because I felt like for me, I didn't really like that because I was so true to
That's
the
interesting.
old school.
I think a lot of traditionalists have that
Yes.
same thing. 'Cause
I-
my dad, I mean, it could be because of his age, but most people who kind of grew up with that golden age type of stuff, they
and
didn't
I
really
think
like
that's
that.
the thing. I think I have comic book like I have old people comic book taste. Like I like
Back when my heroes were
yeah,
heroes.
I mean to be honest, like I love like there's a lot of dark storylines that I really really enjoy from Marvel and DC, but things that I go back to and read all the time are some of the more lighter ones, or like they end on a lighter note, or there was a reason. You know what I mean? It wasn't just dark all the time.
But actually, I think just real quick, I think because like you said, you're a completionist, so you actually went back when people kind of like either actually more your age would have started in that sort of renegade era.
Yeah.
So that's their superheroes.
Right.
That's their action.
Yeah.
So but for like older people, like my dad and people who read the Gold and Silver Age, they're used to their superheroes acting a certain way, and if they were renegades, they still had that howdy doody of like it's
funny. I was always a Finch rider when it came to that. Like I was with it when Batman became darker, right? But not too dark, right?
Yeah.
That's why
Right.
Dark Knight Returns was
Right.
too
Yeah.
pull it back.
Yeah, pull it back a
just
little
give
bit.
me
Yeah.
sort of jerkish Batman,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah.
he's a loner.
Yeah.
He has a family.
Right.
He's like hard nosed, but he has a soft side.
Yeah.
Like give me
Right.
that.
Yeah.
That's why when Image, it's like I was alive during the Image thing, and I remember my friend Steven went full throttle, like yes, this is, and he just gravitated to everything Image, Spawn, Youngblood, all of them, and to me it was like that's cool, but it's a little much, like, and then so I didn't want. I was getting older. I was kind of moving away from the super Boy Scout, but I wanted that fence line. I wanted a little edge.
Yeah.
but not too much.
Right.
And I like things ending on. I wanted my heroes to go through the ringer, but then come out on. But at the end, it's like something like that's why I guess I like some of the Marvel storylines because they would have these big blowout things, and then it would kind of come back to sort of a happy, thing. Like a lot with X-Men, like Phoenix Saga would be tragedy, but then some silver lining stuff would happen.
And I think actually, like just to go back to when we talked about before, Blackest Night plays that really well because you have characters that died coming back. Sorry if I'm spoiling something.
This is very old storyline.
You know what I mean? Like that's the whole storyline. Like they're coming back to life basically, and each one of the characters when they're interacting or when they're dealing with their they're having to kind of deal with their own guilt about how the situations went down, and there's some really great character dialogue. Because like there's all this like coping with this person was dead, I didn't get to grieve, or like I grieved and I'm finally like settled in my new life with my new person, and now my old ex-fiance is back type of thing, you know what I mean? So there's that, but then it ends on such a like kind of beautiful, positive, brighter note when it goes into the Brightest Day storyline, you know what I mean? Like we were talking about before with the Blue Lanterns, like their hope,
Yeah, the cool thing about that, it was like the Blue Lanterns are kind of the strongest lanterns, but they have to be paired with the Green Lantern to use their full power. To have full hope, you gotta have willpower.
You have to have willpower.
So like little stuff like that was like,
and it felt, you're like, that's right, and it was just really, I mean, I like storylines like that. I don't mind dark because I feel like dark can add depth, and I feel like dark storylines really take characters and make them have a lot of character development, but when it's just like all dark all the time, you're kind of like, okay.
It kind of, again, listening to this kind of shows my immaturity when it came to kind of like certain tastes to comics, because Green Lantern I found extremely boring. Like all the superheroes I found super, super boring. Batman just got busy. Like he would just run in, throw some punches, and you're like, But
again, I feel like, so it depends on what you're kind of looking for in a comic, because to me there is value in like run and gun kind of comics. But then I think with the kind of more Boy Scout characters, there has to be a little bit more depth to the writing for it to not be boring. And again, I'm gonna give the speech. If y'all have been at a con and I've given this speech in person, I apologize. But like the speech I always give with Superman is, everyone sees him as a Boy Scout, but you have no idea what it is to have the restraint to constantly hold back your power in order to just go about your everyday life, and you have no idea the amount of willpower and restraint it takes to do something like that. And if you're ever not sure, you're like, oh, that sounds whack, even as you explain it, Justice League, the TV show, the kids show, does a great monologue of this, of him giving the speech, and it's from
Justice League and how you feel and the animated series, Superman animated series.
Oh yeah, well, the Superman animated series, I think honestly a lot of the animated series in general that Warner Brothers puts out are really good. People can have their feelings about the movies. I have my own feelings about some of the movies, but like the animated movies and the animated TV shows, I think, do a great job of telling the stories from the comics. They didn't really take a lot from their own, whatever. I mean, obviously you had to rewrite some dialogue here and there, but a lot of them are based off of the original comics. And again, if you've ever watched any of the Justice League TV shows, if you weren't sure if you would like DC Comics characters, like if you're a hardcore Marvel person, I definitely recommend watching Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, because it gives you a really good introduction to each of the characters.
I think Justice League Unlimited did something I wish the old Fox cartoon X-Men did. And the one thing was they found a way to have a whole bunch of the Justice League lesser characters appear every now and then.
Yes,
and
they
to be able to use because you always gonna have your core roster, right? But then you have, like, if they did it and found a way with that X-Men cast that they had to sometimes have Psylocke in there, sometimes have Shatterstar. I'm just throwing out like just random X-Men, that would. I mean, granted, that was back then, and it was years later. But if they had found a way to channel that back then,
I mean, they teased it a little bit because I know like they would have like, and they would mainly do it with villains, but sometimes with the heroes. I mean, I remember. Oh man, I forgot his name. Like, because he used to scare me. Mr. Sinister. On there, and I was just like, "Oh snap!" Like they brought this dude in.
I mean, they brung. And then when they brought, but they'd be like one-offs, and then they wouldn't know him, and like when they had Colossus coming there, and they didn't know who he was. I'm just like, and then he would. I mean, they brought him back maybe twice, which I. But then they did like with his brother Havoc. They didn't know each other were brothers. They didn't really expand upon it. Like stuff like that kind of annoyed me as a comic book fan. But it was still a great show. But you know, I just think that years later when they got Justice League Unlimited, it just. There was sacrifice they made when they had to pull away from the core, so you didn't get some of those stories, but they were able to tell stories about other characters like what's his name, the boxer.
Wildcat, which again is one of my favorites. That's a JSA original.
I didn't know. I know little to none about JSA.
Right, and again, that's a perfect example of like I think the storyline they did with him was really great, and it wasn't, and it showed some of his backstory. But like it didn't give too much away. Like if you still wanted to, if you like that character, you could go and read the comics and get like his full history. But it gave you just enough. Like he's a boxer.
It threw you in enough to where it's like. If you knew who he was, it was like, okay, they're doing him right. But if from a person who didn't know anything about him, I was like, okay, he's a boxer. And so, but I might want to learn more about his life.
Right.
And I guess you know a lot about him because it showed in that episode he was pretty close with Dinah.
Dinah. So he trained Dinah. He was Dinah's boxing coach in a version of the JSA comics, which she, because Dinah has her voice.
They kind of touched on that a little bit in Arrow, didn't they?
Right, they did a little bit of that. Yeah, they brought Wildcat in a little bit, but it was kind of like
disappeared real quick. Didn't he?
He just, I don't know what happened with that.
They just wrote him out of there.
Yeah, which honestly kind of irritated me because Wildcat again is one of those heroes that I really love because you're always gonna have your top string, your first strings, your starters. You're gonna have your Superman, your Batman, your Wonder Woman, and I love those characters. But sometimes you kind of need to see the local hometown heroes, and I think that's something that Marvel actually does really well. You have I do think it's a little interesting that so many of them are in New York City. Like, I don't know why y'all got the whole team here and no other place, which, coming from New York, you would think, like, oh, well, wouldn't you like that? I'm like, isn't it a little weird, though? They all live here.
That's the thing that, you see, if I was jumping back and forth between Marvel and DC, that was the one thing I love about DC. I love the fact that even... if we'll discuss later, like, as far as creating our own, like, manga series, right? I like that... we don't have to make somebody in America or New York. We kind of just make this fictional place.
Central
City, Gotham City, Metropolis, Keystone City, Star City.
So they all in different places.
They're all different places, and it makes sense.
Yes.
You have this entire United States in Marvel, and 90%, even the X-Men are in New York.
They're in New York.
They're in upstate. But everybody's
they're in upstate.
Yeah, they're upstate. There was Westchester. You got Spider-Man in Queens.
And again, as a New Yorker, that is kind of a fun thing of like you literally have a superhero from your borough, but it's very weird and to me unrealistic because unrealistic in the sense of if we really had metahumans,
if they shared our world,
if they shared our world, you would probably have more diversity of location and just everything, And it's just interesting to me that always happens where like everything's happening in New York. I'm like,
they weren't even in LA or Chicago, which I found weird.
Yeah, no Chicago. Which I think is so weird because having been to Chicago a lot of times, depending on what block you're walking on, it reminds me of home. Yeah. So I'm like, this would have been easy to drop this in.
I think they filmed the last Batman movie. Well, not if not this one,
one of them
Dark
in Chicago, right?
Where they was filmed in Chicago. They used that for some of the. So and that's not the only big city in the United States.
It's really not. And I think especially because sometimes too with the different powers, some of them kind of lend themselves to more small hometown heroes, like Star City. Okay, he's from Green Arrow is from a a city, but it's not as big of a city as New York. And it's a little bit more believable because it is a man walking around in tights with a bow and arrow. That don't really fit in New York, you know, but like Wildcat does. Yeah. Wildcat's from Brooklyn. Well, in my mind, he's from Brooklyn because that's like he's a boxing gym guy, you know. But that could also work in Detroit, you know, Philly. Ooh,
sorry.
Yeah, like that could work in so many cities.
And Detroit,
right? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like that could work. You know, and that's what I always liked about the different cities, like Central City, Metropolis.
Where is Blue Beetle from?
Oh, I don't remember.
I don't know. Because then there's Ted Cord and then there's Jaime Reyes.
Yes, Jaime. Yes, which I like Jaime. I like what they did with his character. I like his story. I like the Ted Cord version too. I've read those, but I do like Jaime because it's a very believable thing of him kind of just like stumbling upon, you know, the scarab. But you know, I don't know.
I liked Jaime, even though I knew a Blue Beetle, but I like Jaime because I had this love for a long time in teen heroes. I love teen heroes. Yes. That's why when Tim Drake, when I was probably about, it's funny because a lot of us associate, those who know, they associate Robin with Dick Grayson all the time, right? And even I did for a long time. And I remember being a kid because I watched, the Adam West Batman and of course Dick Grayson. And I remember picking up I had a card pack or whatever, and it was like Jason Todd was in it. And these were old books at this point. They used to sell the pack, like you go to like the old department stores and you like the 3 or 4 pack. Right. And I'm like, who is this guy? And then but then I was like, I like him. He's bad, but and then I remember when I think I was about in 6th or 7th grade, and they gave this new comic. It was Robin 3. That was and it was Tim Drake, and he had the outfit, he had the spiky hair. I was like, who is this guy? This guy sucks, right? But then I was like, I'm reading it and I'm loving it because I'm loving him. He's Batman's sidekick, but he's like doing all the solo stuff. He even had his own car, the Redbird. And I was like, and I fell in love with Tim. And then I realized I love Robin. Right. I love Dick. Right. I love I love Richard Grayson. Yeah. I love Jason Todd.
I'm sorry, I came this close to me like, but I fought it. I was like,
love Richard Grayson. Jason Todd. Oh, man. And Tim. Like I loved him having to hide the fact, because I think his dad was like sick at one point, which they should have kind of kept it that way. Then they made it kind of like he was almost like a normal dad, and it got weird after that. Bad writing, I think. But for a long time, I liked having to hide those. I like Batman Beyond. When he's a teenager, Batman. I like teen heroes. Like even when Spider-Man was a teenager, I liked him as that. I like a grown man Spider-Man too. Right. In fact, I got tired of teen Spider-Man at one point, and I felt like the problem I had. I was about to go on a tangent on Peter Parker.
Tangent number 2. Because I was gonna mention Peter Parker, so you might need to go on.
Let me just say one thing about that, because they keep rebooting him.
Yep.
And he got to the point one time where a teacher was like, all right, that's cool. He has a real job, right? There's no way a person that smart should be a photographer forever, right? Especially now in the 21st century. And it's like, all right, he's a teacher. He wants to share his knowledge. And then at one point, he became like really smart. He was working for this $1 billion company as an inventor, which was cool. He came up with I think it was Horizon is the name of it. Okay. And he was coming up with these gadgets. He would make these gadgets like special headphones, but he would also use it in Spider-Man mode. Like, these would turn off my senses if someone using vertical attacks against me, like Mysterio or somebody. Right. So it made sense. It's like, all right, you made it. You got, because Peter's supposed to be a smart among like all these geniuses, like Hank Pym and Reed Richards. He's supposed to be kind of like Bruce Banner, kind of almost, if not on their level, right? Right. Then why is he like working these dead end jobs? It just didn't make any sense.
That's true.
Like he ain't, all right. I'll be honest. You don't want him to be billionaire Bruce Wayne because he's supposed to be the everyman Spider-Man. Right. But he's still so smart. Give him. He shouldn't be poor. Right.
Right.
A poor teenager trying to put, that's fun.
Right.
But come on, he's a grown man. He has like this PhD or on that level. He's working Doc Connors. He's smart enough to have a good job.
You know what's so funny about that too? Because I have a coworker and we're gonna continue this tangent for just another brief moment, but. Like, cause one of my coworkers, his favorite character of all time is Spider-Man. Like that dude, he loves Spider-Man, and I was like, oh, that's nice, okay. Cause it's not something I really read. To be honest, when I would read the Spider-Man comic books, they weren't bad by any means at all. It just wasn't something that really worked for me. I don't know what it was, cause I love Young Justice. I've definitely done the teenage.
For me,
whatever.
For
me, it was the quippiness all the time.
There's a little bit of that I'm not crazy about.
Like, he'll be fighting somebody and be like, "Whoa, watch out!"
In fact, I used to think that was missing from the original movies. I didn't think Tobey Maguire did enough quipping. I did. Andrew Garfield, I think, did the best.
Yes. I like, so again, and I feel like it's, no, it's okay. I actually feel like I'm not allowed to have a favorite Spider-Man movie because I'm not really into the character. But if I had to pick one, Andrew Garfield was my favorite because I felt like he balanced. No, sorry, Toby. It's not my favorite. But I
think if you build, you take them all, they come.
Yeah.
Honestly, the reason why I say Toby is just the nostalgia. Like, that was my first.
Yeah.
I think it was all of ours, but and there were things. Oh, sorry. Well, of the movies, right?
Not mine.
Oh, there was a movie before that.
No, it was our first. Oh. Well, actually, there was. I rented one when I was a child. I'm a little older than these guys, but and it was the worst. The technology-wise, it was really bad.
I see.
It was
okay. It was one of those. Okay, like the original. Okay.
Hey, it can't be worse than the first Captain America.
I saw that too. I thought that was better.
I for some reason, I caught that on TV. Like,
it wasn't that bad to me.
I don't know. That dude had that. It wasn't even rubber. It was like fabric.
Yeah.
And it was. I mean, it was on the level. It was on the level. I'll tell you, it was on the level of like Masters of the Universe. The doll.
Let's not talk about that.
But that's how it was, because like the Red Skull was kind of that same sort of like, you could tell like, dude, I can see your nose, man.
Man.
But anyways, I'm sorry.
This is about her. This is about you.
I'm sorry. No, well, that's fine, because again, I feel like I'm not allowed to have strong feelings about Peter Parker and Andrew Garfield and all that. But it's funny that you mentioned the smartness thing, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't know he was supposed to be that smart.
I didn't know
until the most recent movies, and I was like, why is he putting together his own suit? Like, what are we talking about?
He's been supposed to be that smart.
And that's the thing. And again, people will probably be like, oh, well, you're just out of the loop. You're darn right. I'm out of the loop. But like, I'm a DC girl. Yeah. But also, I just don't feel like that fits with a cool teenage story. Like, he's not like dorky. Well, he is dorky.
Well, he was before he got big.
But yeah, and it's just,
and he's
I don't know. Dorky. It's just, I don't know. It's just not, don't fit for me. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Anyways, back to what we're talking about.
Well, we're just talking about your path of being a fan of comic books and your favorite kind of. So you say you like Alan Moore, a lot of his stuff.
Yeah, I like a lot of his stuff. Also, and we were talking about storylines that I can always go back to. Crisis of Infinite Earths. If you've never read it, first of all, I think it's required reading for the DC universe, because it rerouted the universe in the first major way, and in a very impactful way that I feel like since then they have not been able to achieve. Like the New 52 was kind of like meh.
The 52 was terrible.
Well, there were certain things I liked about the New 52, like they brought back Barry Allen. No. Well, okay. Let me preface this by saying I don't dislike Wally. I love all of the Flash versions. Give me a Jay Garrick, give me a Wally, give me Impulse, give me Barry. I love them all. The full Flash family. Anytime we do a full Flash family event, I'm into it. But
Max Mercury and all that.
Yeah, I'll take Max. I'll take Max. Okay,
You
I
know-
mean he is like
you know
a
what?
fourth stringer, but I'll take it.
I have nothing against Barry because especially like he had the resurgence over the past 10, 15 years, right? It's just that when I started paying attention, I remember my first Flash comic book. I think I had to go to work with my dad. He like bought me this comic, and Wally was already the Flash.
Right.
They drew whoever drew him. He was overly swole.
Yeah.
I don't. He was like
he
this.
was big.
And
He was a big boy.
I thought that's how like. But then I guess. You see him on Young Justice, he's like the skinny kid.
Yeah.
And I associate him as being Flash, and it made Barry seem cool as the Flash that was, and he has this legacy, and then you got Bart, his grandson, who's like warding under Wally, who's a fan.
Right.
And I just thought it worked better for that version of for me as a fan reading it, and Bart being, from the future, and he's rolling with Robin and Con-El.
Yeah.
So but that's why I was just kind of like, I have nothing against Barry, just that I know why.
Right, you know Wally, and again, I don't mind.
I'm so sorry. You said you like all of the Flash. Can you list them all again?
Oh, I don't think I can list them all.
Well, no,
she's basically did.
But
She basically
which
did.
one? Like.
I was just saying Jay Garrick, Barry Allen. Now, of course, I don't remember.
Now let me ask you.
I don't remember the girls.
And I'm ashamed to say that because normally I'm not wearing the shirt today, but normally I try to rep all my girls, all the female characters.
Now let me ask you, do you like Ezra?
Nobody does.
No.
Nobody does. But that trailer was fire. Though.
Yeah, I mean, wait, I'm sorry. I was trying to think of a
Urza. I think Urza.
Ezra Miller. Ezra Miller.
He's a terrible human.
You know what's so funny?
I'm sorry. But,
you know what's really funny?
You like Ezra, except him. He ain't no Flash.
No, he ain't.
What'd you think of?
He's no Flash of mine.
What did you think of Flash?
What, the show? I like the show. Oh, well, I like the show for a time.
I did too.
It kind of took a weird turn for me. Actually, I shouldn't say a weird turn. It wasn't necessarily like a weird turn. It was a weird turn for me personally. It just kind of started getting repetitive. I want to say kind of like around season 3 or 4. Probably more leaning towards 4.
It's always hard with shows like that because they don't have as high a budget. So it's
right.
hard. I think when they go
10
years like that, it's harder to keep it.
It is hard. And I think honestly Grant Gustin did a fantastic job. I think he makes a really great Barry. Except that he's not blonde, but I'm not tied to that. That's okay. But
that's
I
think I also liked about Wally had the red hair.
He had the red hair. He was a ginger.
Ginger. He had no soul.
Yeah.
No soul.
But again, I'm into Wally. I feel like Wally was a fantastic character, and in fact, Crisis of Infinite Earths, that's when the mantle gets passed. Not that I'm gonna stop the spoilers there if you decide to read it, but
Crisis of Infinite Earths is one of the oldest storylines.
But
if they don't know by now,
that's true. Well, some people don't.
Yeah, that's true.
But again, that's a lot of people. A lot of people don't know, and again, a lot of people know what came of that story, but they don't know that it came from Crisis of Infinite Earths. Like they don't understand why these people are in the same dimension and all that stuff. But it's.
Did you ever read when I forgot what storyline is it? And it was one of those crises, but it was like the later ones when Superboy Prime got out.
Oh,
he was wilding.
Yeah,
that was so awesome. Imagine
that was good.
Superman.
Was that?
It was Superboy Prime.
That wasn't Final Crisis though, right?
Was it
Final?
Well, he was just like. They couldn't hold. He was there. It was like Superman at his strongest, but he was like a crazy teenager.
If I could get up, I'd go to the
punch,
shelf.
killing everybody. Like with his imagine this Superman just going ham and just
we shouldn't have even talked about this because now I'm looking for it on a shelf. But I reorganized the shelf to make it pretty, so it's probably up at the top. But it might have been Final Crisis.
Yeah, it might have been. I don't know.
If you're watching this on YouTube, go to the comments and let us know if we're wrong, because I don't mind being corrected.
We are a geek channel, not just a manga anime channel.
Yes.
We're all encompassing.
All of it.
Now, if DC Infinite on Earth isn't your cup of tea, just go to the Marvel Comics versus DC comics.
Oh my goodness.
Them just,
Yo, that's Superman. That's Superman with the long hair.
Oh man.
That was
dark times.
That was dark times.
You looking like Richard Gere.
Yeah. Yeah. But
good times.
Okay. Well, one thing but you know what? It's funny. I'm looking at the thing. Is that
You got the Hulk.
Who drew that one?
Mark.
We
The
can't
Mars,
see.
Jergens.
We can't. Well, Jergens.
I'm sorry.
Well, it doesn't matter because we were talking about favorite writers.
Yeah, favorite.
I was gonna say one of my favorite artists is George Perez, and he actually signed
Does a lot of Wonder
that
Woman
up
stuff.
there. Yeah, he does do a lot of fantastic Wonder Woman stuff, but he did Justice League of America, and that's signed by him up there in the corner. So, you get a zoom in on that. My prized possessions.
Oh, you gotta grade it too.
Yeah.
9.2.
Yeah, man.
That's hot.
Oh, I don't play.
That's what's
I
up.
only buy the finest.
I didn't
comic
got
book.
none of my stuff graded, and I really need to.
No, seriously, that's like a serious prized possession of mine. I don't buy a lot of things, so what I do buy, I make sure is either really special, like really high quality, or it's really special to me personally. Because like my Dinah up there, that's the one modeled off of the Justice League Dinah, and it's a fantastic face on her.
What is it about Dinah that appeals to you?
Honestly, so, okay, real talk. When I was young, I used to sing all the time. I was always in choirs and everything. And I always thought when I was like a little kid, you know, when you pretend to like have a superpower and it's super lame because you're a little kid. I always thought I wanted her superpower to be my superpower. Like I wanted to be able to use my voice to like knock, the canary cry to knock people out. Sonic cry. I just think that's super cool. I also like that she's trained in hand-to-hand combat because when I was a kid, I did karate and boxing. So I felt like she was very realistic. I felt like if I was gonna have a superpower, and if I trained hard enough, I could be her, you know. Also, her costume is very easy to put together, and I like that too. It's literally just a leotard and some tights, and you call it a day. If you're bold, no tights, just leotard and a leather jacket. It's very simple. You gotta be real bold. So
I mean, I guess you probably read a lot of Green Arrow then. Because that's made primarily where she was in.
And in fact, you can't see it on camera, but that is an original line art piece of Birds of Prey. Now, of course, I don't remember the number of Birds of Prey. You could probably see it up there, but it's a Green Arrow and Black Canary in the same thing. That was a gift.
Yeah, I read a little Birds of Prey of the Gail Simone run.
Yeah.
Later, because I don't know who did the art. Was it Gail? She's an artist, right? Yeah. So I like the art, and I'm a big fan of Helena Bertinelli. I like the Huntress.
Yes. Huntress is a very. I feel like
she's one of Dick Grayson's conquests.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Well, but you know, it's true.
That's my man.
But honestly, but again, I feel like she's another one of those that's like a very underrated character.
I thought it was cool that she was on Justice League Unlimited.
Yes.
As well.
See, she had her time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, Justice League Unlimited. If you don't want to be,
are great.
Yeah, if you don't want to be a DC person, but you just want to know what's going on, just watch Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. Yeah. It sums up pretty much everything you need to know.
Yeah, Matt Nightwing was not. He was in Justice League Unlimited, and like a small shot. He was in the shadows when they went to Bloodhaven.
Wait, was who?
Nightwing.
Oh yeah.
Really wish he was in a full-on episode.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, they did so much with so many characters, and they did a lot of like, if you're like kind of I always call myself a historian, not because I actually am like good at remembering everything like a real historian, but I like to know the histories of the characters. They did so many characters that you really don't see even now, and I get why. Some of them have not aged well, some of them not very PC anymore.
Who's an example?
Well, so again, I used to always try to rep any Latino characters and any female characters. I would always try to go hard for, even if they made no sense. So like Aztec.
Let the fans know you are.
Oh yeah, I gotta tell people I'm Puerto Rican, Italian, and Norwegian, but I'm hardcore Puerto Rican from my people out there. But like they're so Aztec, even the original, like they made him cool in the Flash. What's his name? You know who I'm talking about. Yeah. No, he had because again he was like in the 80s. It was kind of like a little bit wrong. Vibe. There you go,
I
Vibe.
remember that just because I didn't believe.
But that was
But Vibe originally
He
was
was
supposed to, he was supposed to be like, so I don't.
Vibe and then Reverb.
Right. Somebody will correct me online, I'm sure. But I always felt like he was supposed to be Puerto Rican because he was supposed to be like kind of like a beatboxer and like a b-boy. You know, he would do the dance moves and stuff. So like a lot of those like didn't age well. But I'm glad that they tried to like reinterpret some of them. Yeah. Another one that's not Latino, but I felt like they tried to repurpose, and they show him in Justice League Unlimited is Apache. He grows like 10 feet tall, which again is like, you know, people are like.
He was in the old, I think Super Friends.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yep. And which again is funny because people are like, "Oh, Super Friends, that's lame," and it's like, but it was,
that was
a
one of my
really
first
good.
exposures to that
It was
stuff,
a really good introduction.
Yeah.
If you didn't know the characters, it would tell you.
Yeah.
And they actually in Justice League Unlimited, they even brought back the Wonder Twins for an episode.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
I remember that.
it was you probably remember it. They kind of changed the plot line a little bit to make it make sense, but it was when they kind of did. They did Kara's storyline, but they kind of, and again, people who know more than me, feel free to correct, but the
Kara is Supergirl.
Yes,
Yeah, for
Supergirl.
those who
Sorry,
don't know.
Kara. Oh yeah, I forgot. This is a manga podcast. I keep assuming.
Well, it's a geek. Just anybody who's
Yeah,
listening.
anybody
We
who's
all
listening.
sorts of people from anybody.
But you guys have done anime episodes up until now, so
Yeah, we have.
I'm always used to getting corrected by like even more hardcore fans than me. So I'm assuming I'm gonna be corrected, but I actually might have to.
Nerd, so
Yeah.
I'm a little bit of everything.
But yeah, Kara was Supergirl, and basically they took a lot of Con-L's plot lines and gave them to Kara in Justice League Unlimited, and so
Con-L.
Superboy,
the
sorry.
clone version of
Yes.
during the Death of Superman storyline.
Yes, exactly.
We know him best for having earrings and a leather jacket.
Yeah,
and the
that's the
shave
best.
size. That's
Yes.
the old Con-L.
That's the old. That's the good. But I had a huge crush on him.
I bet you did.
I was like,
yeah, that was who he was
dude, that was
for.
the best.
That's what he was for.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember, man. I was kind of. I wasn't a super hardcore Superman, but I was kind of mad when they killed him off and they brought on.
I
But then
know.
I like John Henry Iron Steel.
Oh,
The-
man.
the Eradicator was cool.
I
The-
think
Was
John
that
Henry.
Afro?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
nice.
think John Henry Irons and like Steel. I think that is a highly underrated character, and I know anybody who remembers the '90s,
The Shaq movie?
the Shaq. No, don't you dare, don't you dare talk about my Shaq movie. No, because actually,
Kazam.
showing like you know when you
No.
actually it kind of was, but I don't care, okay? Because when I was a kid, I remember like that was a movie that they would play when we were in elementary school, and it would be raining outside, so we couldn't have recess. They would take everyone into the auditorium and play that movie in sections, and I loved every
Oh my
minute of it.
God,
And
I
that was my movie.
Steel
Now
again.
in fairness, I did watch it now as an adult, and it is bad. Okay, I will fully admit that, but I have really fond, nostalgic memories.
We gotta do an episode of movies we loved as a kid, and
what?
did not age
Yeah.
well. And one of the ones I did was Double Impact with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Don't you dare
No,
talk
that's
about.
Double Team.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
This is
no,
when he played twins.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
One was raised in
Yes.
Hong Kong,
Yes.
and the other one was raised in France.
yeah.
Terribly acted.
Let me
movie.
tell you something.
But it can't do no wrong. I love that
Can't.
movie. It's just not. it's
Honestly, I'm with you on that one because my mom is a huge action movie
Black
fan,
Sucando.
and we watched that 100 times.
100 times.
That was amazing. What then? Now
Yeah.
you're like, it's a little bad, but
it had
it's a
boobs.
lot of that.
No.
It did, but that was not why I watched it.
That's why I watched. No, they had martial arts in it, and
Yeah.
Jean-Claude Van Damme was the star back then. Like, he could do no wrong
doing
for
the
me.
splits,
Doing the splits.
doing the high kicks.
Oh man, me and my brother,
That's
we
fast.
was them. We was every time we watched the movie, we would fight after that. We would just
That's how.
It's like you and Jerome.
Yeah, that's how me and my brother. Every time we
Yeah.
watch like kung fu movies, we like stand up and like stretch and be like, and just go right into it.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit.
Yeah.
We established you are a huge
I'm
comic
a
book
huge
fan,
comic
but
fan.
you are a co-founder of a manga company now.
Yes, I
and
am.
You are partnered with and married to a mangaka, a
Yeah.
manga artist.
That's right.
So, and you guys met New York Comic Con years ago, right?
Yes. Yes, that was the origin story.
That's the
I'm
origin
sorry,
story.
go ahead.
So, even before Moonlair started, you were at conventions with him selling art. So
Yeah.
how was that experience? First starting doing that.
Oh yeah, it was great. So I mean, just like as before, a little backstory before we actually even got together. Like I said, my first convention was probably 2007, maybe 2008. We met in 2013. So I had already been going to conventions for quite some time, and actually had friends in the indie space, and I feel like calling them friends makes it seem like we had such a close relationship. We were probably just really annoying teenagers bothering them at the booth. But I'm really glad that they didn't tell us that we had to go away, because we would like hand out flyers and like we'd get to hang out. So I always liked being kind of behind the scenes of conventions. So then when we met in 2013 at New York City Comic Con, it kind of fell into place. Like it already made sense. Like a lot of the things we would do together. Our first convention together was 2014, right?
Yeah,
the year after at Awesome Con.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
That probably wasn't our first one tabling together.
Maybe Southern. Was it Southern MD?
It was probably Southern MD.
It was Southern.
Yeah.
MD.
Yeah. So you were doing
I
a
did
comic
lot.
book.
That was going around.
Yo, man,
Yeah.
we were going around. Well, and it was funny because again, we were just dating, so I was just kind of tagging along. But I love conventions. I love the vibe. I love the behind the scenes of conventions. I love everything about that space.
So by the time you did that Awesome Con, do you think that how many conventions do you think y'all had done at that point? And Awesome Con is in Washington D.C. area, and that's where I met them.
Yeah.
So, and even at that point, y'all, I guess you were doing it, but not a lot, because there was that time when you were selling that art, and you were like, you didn't know how much you wanted to sell it for.
Yeah.
Because you were selling pre-framed.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
That swindled you got no.
Hey,
Swindled.
but again, like
But it all worked out.
Yeah, it did.
We were definitely
It
happy like doing it and so like that. Just because, and also like we were selling prints; these weren't like originals.
Right.
So, like,
You can play
kinda,
around with
like,
the price a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long were you doing it at that point together?
Oh, actually, I feel like we were doing that like a lot.
We actually were doing a lot, because that's also when we met. You had met Eric a little bit before I did. Eric Suggs. Shout out to Eric.
Shout outs AWA.
AWA Artway Alliance. Almost wore that shirt today. But yeah, next.
Hey, Eric, let me get one.
I know, right? Yeah. So, our good friend Eric has always been in the convention scene, and so when you met Eric, he kind of was putting us on to like which conventions we should do in this area, and so we were kind of following AWA around.
Pretty much, yeah.
Or even in some cases tabling with them. We had
absolutely.
gotten a lot of great opportunities by tabling with Eric and AWA.
Definitely.
So we had probably done, I want to say, at least 4.
Yeah.
Because we did definitely Southern MD and Annapolis Book Festival. Because
Oh, yeah,
you met
that's right.
the one of the writers of the new Thundercats TV show.
Yeah.
You remember that?
The one, the 2017 one?
Yes.
Shout out, I love that show.
Well,
I mean, that dude.
Andrew didn't.
Whiskers.
But what's really funny
Shout
about
out to
that.
Greg McDougal. He knows about that.
What's hilarious though was Andrew had kind of went on a small rant about
Really?
how he didn't like it.
That's before I knew who he was.
Right. Yeah, and he was like, "Well, funny story. Actually, I co-wrote that." And we were like, "Ooh."
Or to my memory had something to kind of do with it.
Didn't he wasn't the co-writer?
I can't really remember.
Well, either
and
way.
I don't want to like.
He might have wrote an episode if
Yeah.
I'm not thinking.
If I'm not, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome. Should've got canceled.
He had something to do with it, and he really liked it.
No, this
Yeah.
Thundercats whole show that came now, that's a travesty.
No,
but
it was, yeah.
I like, the 2007. And I was a big fan of the original Thundercats too, but that's another.
Yes,
that's another-
we will talk about that
Yeah.
next time because
Yeah.
I got some quarrels. with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's another versus
Yeah.
series.
Yeah.
But so we had done, so we had probably done maybe 4 or 5 conventions. And then we did Awesome Con. And Awesome Con was the biggest one. Like you said, it's the DC it's a Washington D.C. convention. It's our biggest
Yes,
one
it's
in
the
the
New York
DC.
Comic Con of
DC.
that area of DC, Virginia kind of area, Maryland.
Yep.
It's getting bigger like every year.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And so y'all did those, and I'd followed y'all for a while after that. Like you were still doing more conventions, and then you were doing like some of sort of the galleries, what they call them, exhibits.
Yeah,
exhibits.
gallery
So
art
you
shows.
was doing that for a while. And I guess one day Pandy decided, hey, I'm gonna do a book. So was it the book first, and then the idea of the company around it, or was it like, all right, I'm gonna do both? And how did he kind of
Yeah, I mean, can I talk about that? Or you want me to? Okay, so I'll tell
this is like a part 2 of the origin story a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this might be my.
Yes,
this is my
alternate.
when my alternate history.
Alternate
history. Yeah, this is my version of what happened. So what had happened was, but no, it was definitely. So Andrew had done, just for backstory, Andrew had done a Western art style comic with his friend, and that's what we were touring around doing, those first couple conventions. And then in selling fan art. So typical, if you guys have ever been to conventions before, typical Western art convention artist things like fan art and stuff. But then during COVID, no, not during COVID, before COVID.
Yeah, before COVID.
2019, you've been teaching at the school.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, I don't know why for a second I felt like that needed to be secret. I was like, we're giving a lot of information, but I was
waiting in the bushes. I know where you are. Go, guys!
I don't know. I mean, I am a little bit paranoid about that kind of thing. But back to it. So Stone Branch, you had been working at the school for probably 4 years at that point, and you were like, I want to do a manga program.
Yeah.
Like, you've been teaching figure drawing and portrait, and most importantly to this podcast, comic art. And then you wanted to do a manga line. But then when you were doing the manga and anime stuff, you really felt like you needed to give them an example.
Yes, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
And that was kind of where Go Ganzi originated, was like, literally, it was supposed to just be sample work.
And again,
which is so crazy to think about.
And again, like, I know we talked about this before, but this was supposed to be kind of a one shot. It was supposed to be one and done, and it was not supposed to go any further than just a one shot. So, having the book, like, starting it, and then as we're sort of working on it, kind of, trying to convince and then kind of explain, kind of like, man, I really want to do this, because we've done a business together before this, Call That Art, and that was our kind of first experience of like working together with each other. So yeah, I'm sorry.
No. I think that's a really good way.
So
of
I was gonna
explaining
say, I was gonna ask. At this point, I've been dating for a while, and but when did you get married?
So we got married in 2018.
Okay, so y'all were married. So y'all are married. So obviously, you at this point, you're familiar with manga and anime. Like you're dating, so obviously he's gonna show you what his interests are.
Yes.
And you've dabbled in. You have friends who's showing you Bleach and things like that. So you are familiar with anime at this point.
Yeah.
But what did he show you, or what did y'all watch together, or to get you more into it by this point? Because at this point, if he's saying I'm gonna start a manga company, you're more familiar with the concept of manga, how it's written, what it looks like, anime, whatever.
Yeah. So it's funny. I'm glad you asked that question, because that actually happened a little bit before. So 2013 we met, 2014 we started dating, 2018 we got married. But between that time,
and the reason why I giggle is because, like, when we were in our talking stage, I was like, said something about Dragon Ball Z, and she was like, oh, I would like to see that. And it's like the meme where you're like, oh, you found the one.
Well,
as most people be like,
I'll let him down, because controversy number 2, 3, 4. I'm not a fan of
and and just to give perfect context, I rewatched it with her and was like, man, this is.
That's when you try to show. Look, they're about to do the thing.
Yeah. But I was kind of like, man, this is not. I mean, it's not. No, like, I'm not saying it's not good. It was just like how I remember it was so hype, was so fast, was so just, because I was thinking about it from a kid's perspective.
But you're also, when you're watching it back though, you're trying to watch it, kind of see somebody else's reaction.
Yeah.
So it's never gonna live up to that expectation.
So, but
if you're watching it alone, you might have been fine with it.
Yeah, but it would have been like, oh, I remember this.
Yeah.
But so as I was watching it, I was like, oh man, like, and I kept looking over, and I'm like. I was like, you sure you want to watch this? And you're like, yeah, I kind of want to finish it. But like,
That's what happens when a girl likes you. They just do it.
Well, but the other thing too is, again, because I'm a completist. I wanted to finish it. I wanted to, and especially because and it's funny because Andrew has this about food. He will keep eating something even though he thinks it might be bad. I will keep watching shows, or I will keep reading books even if I think they're bad. I just need to know how they end. And I can't skip ahead. We've tried skipping ahead in movies and manga and different things and animes.
The only one thing that
I
she
can't
did not
do it.
finish was the Naruto thing.
I can't.
The fillers got us.
so sorry.
The fillers got
You have to watch that with a filler list. But not, and it gets really good. But that's not to make a conversation about that. But
no, tangent number 12. I do want to genuinely finish Naruto, but I think you're right. I think that is the one exception I'm gonna have to make. I have to watch it with a filler list because it was just too much.
It's a lot. It really is a lot.
And
I'm actually surprised it survived cancellation due to the amount of fillers.
Right. Yeah. Because the story just does not move whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like nothing is happening.
You could just tell they were twiddling their thumbs and just waiting, right? Because it's like night and day to see the real story, like the canon story versus the filler. It's really different.
Yeah.
The pacing is very different.
I was thinking I would have probably put you onto the manga series because
it would be a better read.
So it's funny you guys both say that. I think that might be where I start because I already have the Shonen Jump subscription. So I think I'm just gonna go for it and read the manga and just kind of either give up on the anime or watch it with the filler list because it's too much. But
so what was it that did kind of grab you and then I think maybe Fairy Tail, or is it
I love Fairy Tail, which is funny because so if we're talking back to the chronological order here. 2014 we tried watching Dragon Ball Z. It didn't work out for me. Then we tried a couple of other things. We watched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
We did, yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah,
that was fantastic. Yeah, great series. And then we watched Samurai Champloo, and I love that. To this day, I can rewatch that whenever, really. That's amazing. It's just actually I have a hard time watching the last episode because I don't like that you don't really know what happens.
Yeah, it does leave that open-endingness.
Yeah,
to it.
It just kind of breaks my heart watching it because I'm like, you just don't know.
Sometimes I like open-endedness just because if I don't want the journey to end per se.
I can imagine.
But that's why if they had walked off into the sunset together, fine.
They did go their separate
but they went
ways.
separate.
So in my mind, they got back together.
Right. Well, but again, because that's what they kept doing, they kind of kept meeting each other as you kept watching the series. They just couldn't. It was like fate kept bringing them together. Their roads would intersect.
Yeah.
It kind of leaves you with that where you feel like the next episode would be them intersecting again, but it's that unknowing for me that kind of makes me sad. But so 2014 was when I started watching anime, and that was a big step for me. I mean, because honestly, I love you now and I loved you then, but if I hadn't found an anime that I genuinely enjoyed for myself, by myself, I wouldn't have been able to stick with it. Like Love Alone was not going to keep me watching anime.
So as he explained to you the concept, and he's going through this concept of doing a book, and he's doing Gogoganzi, and he's explaining it to you, did you kind of get it right away at this point because you had watched certain ones?
Yeah.
You kind of got what he was going for.
Honestly, and I hope it's okay that I say this, but we say this all the time to each other because we're very honest with each other. But the entire time we did call that art, I had a very hard time knowing what our next move would be and knowing the cohesiveness of it because
you're referring to the previous adventure you had.
Yeah. So Call That Art was our first business where we were really primarily Andrew, but I would help. where Andrew would be just kind of selling his fan art and selling random, original pieces. And that was really difficult for me because there was no common theme. It was just whatever he really enjoyed working on. And Andrew has
sounds very artistic.
Yeah, and honestly,
it's an ink blot.
Yeah, but not for nothing. It's funny because he has such an amazing talent.
And we all know
that he could do it all.
Yeah, he can.
And so I was like, well, why don't you just focus on one of these things? And you're like, but I like this other thing too. And I'm like, but you got to pick one because it's hard for me to envision where you're going with this. And I think if it's hard for me to envision it, it'll be hard for other people to envision it.
And I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, like when looking back at certain pieces of my work, some people will be like, oh, man, this is so good. There's certain pieces that was kind of the darkest time.
The darkest time of life.
No, honestly, of my life, because it's a physical representation of, I didn't know where I was going. Like I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so Call That Art has some very fond memories. Like we had we had a gallery in Florida, we had a grand opening, Michelle was there. We did a couple of shows, but it was really, I was really lost at that time.
It's funny you say that. I felt the same way about, there's a series I tried to, I told you about, it was Maze on Koku, which is from the creator, Rumiko Takashi. Creator of Ranma 1/2 and Inuyasha and stuff like that. So it's a love story between a young man and a young woman, and he was it was about him trying to find his path in life, and he's going to school and things like that. It's hilarious, but there's a lot of good heartwarming moments. I implore people to read it. It takes place like in the 80s, I think 70s, 80s. But I didn't finish it for a long time. You know why? Because I felt like following his life, I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself, and I just felt like watching this story unfold made me feel a way about my own, and trying to decide what I was gonna do. And I was like, I can't. And it's a great book. It's a great book, but it reminded me too much. I think I was in a bad relationship. I was like, this was my life is gonna be like. I'm gonna be with this person. It was a lot, and I didn't want to, and I couldn't enjoy it because it was too real to me.
That makes sense. And again, it's hard when you have that moment for yourself, and it's kind of sad because it's all of your inner workings, and that's why for me those pieces, because that was the beginning of our relationship, have a completely different value. I look at them fondly, like I'm like, oh my goodness, you remember this? And he's like, no, I don't want to look at it. But so because
those days, like 2:00 in the morning, I'm drawing and I'm like, what is this? Or I would show it to, Michelle at the time, and she'd be like, oh, that's really nice. It would be like this really dark, not necessarily dark in theme piece, but it would be like a really dark piece. Physically. And then
it looks like a bed of roses. No, that means it's a knife, and I'm really gonna
a lot of those were kind of just sort of just thinking pieces and stuff. And it was just really it didn't. And then I would do a semi chapeau, I would do I
know what that is.
It would just nothing fit. And so well, I'll let you finish because that's something because Michelle brought a lot of things that I encourage all artists or people that are trying to do something creatively to get some structure, get some people that will help you to sort of piece it together, because it's all fun when you're just creating, you're doing things and stuff like that, but when you have to kind of sit it down and be like, I want to present this to the world, nothing is worse than people be like, this is cool, this is a lot of stuff, what is this, and then you get different audiences that maybe you don't connect with, because they may like this dark piece and they're like, oh, I love it, and you're like,
and that used to happen to you guys a lot, with TBD too.
Certain people that really wasn't into certain I don't consider myself gothic, absolutely not. But people who would see my pieces would be like, yo, this is death and destruction.
TBD was a comic that Andrew had drawn and helped write with his friend, and it's it's kind of like a tragic love story. It's this guy, he just can't really, he's not catching a break with the ladies basically, and it was just like a completely, it was an emo kind of production, and it just didn't really fit your everyday personality, but it fit what you were going through at the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. But what, and I wanted to ask you, I mean, obviously we lived through it, but just kind of wanted to
we got through it.
Yeah.
We made it.
Because like, I mean, what made you see the vision of Moon Lair versus like Call That Art? Like, what was kind of different about it?
Well, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about like how Call That Art, I had a hard time grasping the vision, but again, Go-Ganzi, the idea for Go-Ganzi started just simply as a, you wanted to have kind of sample work to show your students so that they would know kind of this is what, this is an example of what manga could look like. This is what it looks like to put the panels together. And then once you realize that the story was growing, I remember we were actually on our way to a family reunion for your family to North Carolina.
Yeah.
And we basically wrote out the whole story.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Oh,
during that road trip, like, and
that.
it's not. I mean, obviously, it's not like completely fleshed out.
So
but
you do
all
like
of
while
the
you're driving. You're like
Andrew's driving because
okay.
I don't like highway driving. Andrew's driving, and I'm just writing everything on my phone. All the ideas he's thrown at me.
I'm losing my mind because I'm like,
and
then this thing. Oh man!
Yeah, like he's like losing. Like I'm like, we're gonna swerve off the road. Like we're never gonna make it. But
that's the best type. Of
he was. I mean, we have fight scenes planned out. We've got part of pretty much almost all of Volume 2 planned. That Go-Ganzi. There's a reason why it's a slow burn. It's because it is a very climactic, grand story. It's not a fly by night, get everything in one go kind of story. We have like 4 volumes pretty much planned, and Volume 1 and 2 absolutely planned. Like totally, we already know where that's going.
That's what's up.
I mean, and but again,
have not picked up your coffee.
Pick
it up.
Yes. I'm not an expert at selling because I didn't see that as an opportunity, but. Yeah, no, honestly, Go-Ganzi was funny because it was supposed to be sample work. We were talking about like 20 pages. And then it turned into this epic tale of, what's right, what's wrong. It's a kid trying to figure out his place in life, what's right in this universe. Is good and bad as black and white as that, or is it more gray? Is a really depth to the story. But so once I saw how passionate you were about Go-Ganzi, and the more we talked, the more it seemed like there would be other stories. I was like, oh, this is a totally separate business. Like, we have to think about rebranding. Like, we will, from the ashes of Call That Art, we will rise as Moon Lair. Like, that was kind of what I was envisioning. And envisioning is very important because, again, with Call That Art, I had a hard time visually. Like Andrew, I'm very artistic and visual. It was very hard for me to see, I'm getting super, like, hippy-dippy with it. But, like, it's hard for me to see where it's going. With Moon Lair, it's different. I can see where we're going. I see where we're going to be 5 years from now. Like a lot of people talk about when you have a business, you should try to have, even in life, it's good for you to have like a, 1 to 2 year plan, then a 3 to 5 year plan, a 5 to 10 year plan. I see all that from Moon Lair. I know exactly where we want to go, and to me, that was why it was so easy to get on board because I was like, I know exactly.
I know what this is. I know what this is.
It was one of those things where, like, with Call That Art, I always felt like I was just helping. With Moon Lair, I'm actively part of everything we do. In fact, sometimes I'm almost like, smush your face. It's my turn. I gotta do this. I have.
I guess you could feel that way, but to me, outside looking, it always looked like you were part of the show.
Well,
like you're set up. I mean,
yeah.
it's like one of the conventions. Like you were the You were part of the production. Of it, you know, so like, he did, he did the art, but like you did the setup, y'all did the setups together,
right?
And I'm pretty sure you had a hand in like knowing what I know you
the
about
technology,
you now, the technology,
100%
the technology. You know,
I love you.
Know what we know about Pandy. It's not very, technological guy.
Yeah, right.
So
super science.
So, but obviously, just something definitely you could grasp onto. But even me outside looking in and knowing, Pandy from like a fan point of view, when he said, I'm, Instagram, I'm putting out a book. To me, I was like, this is exactly what he should be doing.
Right.
Like about time.
Right.
It's like I liked him as doing the fan art, but then I was like, of course he's doing this. Of course he should be. So it wasn't for you, like you knew his talent, and it was like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, totally. It made sense. Well, and especially because like it's funny that we were talking about how like Andrew's not tech savvy, but that's because like I do feel like some people, like there's some people that are jack of all trades, and then there's some people that are super specialized, and there's not a right or wrong way. I think he and I are perfect examples of that. I'm decent at a lot of things. Like I'm not an expert by any means in any field. I'm always learning, but I have a good grasp of a lot of different fields, and I think part of that's because you and I are both in tech, and you kind of have to be versatile, like in our professions.
It's good at gathering information.
Yeah, good at information gathering, and I just genuinely love
problem solving.
Problem solving. Yeah, just on the fly troubleshooting, and then like. Before I got into IT, I worked at a hospital, so like a lot of triage. You have to like kind of on the fly think of actions. You have to react in the moment. So there's a lot of things about how my brain works that I'm decent at a lot of things. Andrew is very specialized.
Super special. That's what you said. Super specialized. I was like,
no. But like in an art. Wait, let me finish. Let me finish. No, because we've had this conversation before. Don't you put that on me, Ricky Bobby. Don't you put that on. No, I mean it, and I mean it in the No, I mean it. Your brain is focused on anything artistic, and it's no because you can draw. What?
No, I was just I'm sorry, right?
I'm not.
No, I'm sorry. No.
Stop putting yourself down.
I'm trying
to get this.
No, I hear you.
You guys are getting a really good taste for how we work on day-to-day basis. It's a lot of yelling and a lot of like this motion, but you are very good at artistic things. And it's funny because it's not just one artistic thing. You're a good writer, you're a good artist, you're a good singer, which a lot of people don't know. Hidden talent over here. Andrew has a great singing voice. You're a great actor.
Shout out to my.
I can harmonize with the best of them. I'm about to put out something.
Shout out to my group, Mixed Feelings.
There's a story behind that. I heard about that story.
Yo,
and whoever is out there, remember, you're still out the group.
Mixed feelings.
Anyways, we may talk about that a little bit later. Anyways, I'm sorry.
Mixed feelings? I don't know if we need to bring mixed feelings back into this, but maybe we have to just for the podcast listeners so they know what you're talking about. But Mixed Feelings was Andrew's very short-lived singing group.
R&B group.
R&B group.
It was me and my brother, and then when Michelle came, I was like, "You're a new member of Mixed Feelings." I was like, "The Streets is waiting for our new album, but
no Streets we're calling."
Like my brother, unfortunately, got kicked out of the group numerous times and just jacked up.
I want to remind everyone: there's only 2 members of Mixed Feelings,
Go strong,
so he kicked Jerome out of the group.
Listen. Anyways,
we're off topic. But basically, you're very good at artistic things. So my point was that a lot of times when we're like working together, he's bringing all of this talent, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do we construct this? How do we bring other pieces into it? Like again, the technology component, the just organizational component, project management component. Those are my strengths, you know. And Andrew's strengths is the talent, you know.
Although now you are an official editor, you've done editing and some writing for Gogonazi and Akayumi. So explain that, like how you got.
Again, I dabble.
You dabble.
I'm a dabbler.
But you're also like me and you have conversations, and
Yeah.
you know when we read these stories, we want a lot of things to make certain sense,
Yes,
right, to
yeah,
us as
right,
a reader.
right.
So you may take general ideas that he has, and you're coming at it from a consumer's point of view, a reader's point of view.
Right, exactly.
So you're like, well, how does this supposed to make sense to me as a reader?
Right.
Because like you and me, we can consume books pretty quickly.
Very
when we go
quickly,
through
yeah.
them. So,
right.
So like you can see, you know, you can take what he's got and you can, you know,
Yeah.
mold it into, you know, maybe a word or two,
Right.
and things like that.
Yeah.
So in doing that, you kind of got the bug yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Because I mean, with so it started.
So once again, we got cut off, but it wasn't my fault this time. It was actually another phone.
It was a phone malfunction.
But just like last time, too much fire, too much flames was on this phone.
much
So we're gonna pick up where we left off, and where we left off was.
I was about to say.
You're talking about
do
the
you
editing.
remember?
You're talking about the editing.
Yeah. So.
you editing
Yeah.
in Lair. We got another producer here.
Willa.
Oh yeah.
Young Willa.
Sorry, guys.
Actually, you guys see her like in the crew.
Yeah, she is a member of the team.
Yes.
It's actually, okay, good segue into talking about Moon Lair. If anyone has been on the website lately, you'll know that I fixed the About Us page. Actually, let me clarify. There was nothing wrong with the About Us page. It just wasn't very long. So I added our bios. And
I'm sorry. No, she's got to
and-
go. I'm sorry. No, I can't deal with the licking. No, I can't deal with that.
Okay, all right. Should I keep talking?
Keep
all right.
going,
Well, while Andrew kicks our dog out, she's a licker. If anyone knows Willa, you know that she will lick you constantly unless stopped. And so she has been doing that to Gary. But anyways, Willa is normally part of the crew. She's not a good fit for the podcast setting because her little tippy-tappy feet have been walking around.
Chilling.
She was chilling, and then she got up with too much excitement.
Sorry, I can't deal with that.
Andrew's very noise sensitive. But anyways, what I was talking about was on the About Us page. I put actually, they're not even our bios. They're just little quotes that we put. We didn't put formal bios. But you'll also see Willa's face on there because she is the crew.
Yes.
We affectionately pretend that she is often a part of the process. Andrew's mentioned before on the podcast how he has her spell check.
Spell check things. She
we-
sometimes edits things. That's the reason why sometimes I'll misspell words. It's because she edited.
She was
So,
tippy tapping
yeah.
on the computer.
She missed it.
So if you don't know, we love our dog. But anyways, speaking of editing, that was where we
You
were
will
trying
see
to go.
more adventures of Willa
Yes.
in the V series.
Yes.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in the V series,
Yeah.
Willa will make an appearance in the My Life as a Mangaka.
Yes.
If anyone remembers Andrew's My Life as a Mangaka series, that will make a return in the V series.
Yes.
So, but yeah, we were talking about editing, not dog editing, my editing. And we were talking about how basically it started off as Andrew trying to do one series, and I was just kind of there for, moral support and helping out. But the more we got into writing, or the more he got into writing, the more I was doing more than just spell checking. I was like really helping to give a unique voice to each character. Hopefully that comes across for those of you who have read Gogoganzi. We try to write each character with kind of a unique way of talking. So basically the writing is different, so when you read it you kind of get the accents or you'll get the tonality.
Which just, I mean, reading reading a lot of like either comics or manga is something that you appreciate it when you see it, but as you create it, I didn't really think of that. It was just sort of like if they catch the words that I'm putting in there, like y'all and you know, just different things like that. I was hoping that people will catch the accent. And so when presenting it to Michelle, she was like even with Senzo, like who talks very sort of proper, like, you know, it was such a unique way that Michelle was like, oh, I kind of know what how he would speak, and he would kind of speak very kind of like almost like a novel, almost like, you know, someone's reading it and stuff like that, which I think just really elevated the what is that word? Really elevates the where you're into something. What's
Storytelling?
No.
Immersion?
Immersion. Yes.
Which again is so funny because Gary did a great job with that,
absolutely.
with the dynamic manga. Because, and I'm not just saying that as like a promo for the dynamic manga. I'm just saying that because you are very talented, and you do the voices of not just Obasi, but also Senzo and Cassian.
Yeah.
And you play them all different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like
no, definitely.
to the point where I forget you're all three of those people. Until afterwards, I'm like, I think that was Gary's voice. That was Gary's voice.
Did that help? That like, you know, reading it in a accent, did that help the choices of how you're gonna?
You mean the
play
way it
them?
was written?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. That definitely. I mean, it was the way they were drawn. I kind of saw. Senzo being a little eccentric, but still the way you wrote him, he was still very, even though he's wearing like he's shirtless, right? But he seems wise at the same time, right? So I played him a little bit more that way, you know? Whereas like Cassian, the scowl and kind of, it's like I look at him as, it's like I played him like a bully that's not really a bully. That's the voice I went for. You know what I'm saying? Like he's like very strong in his you know, he has comical anger. But he's like he's serious when he gets down, especially more of his banter back and forth between Obasi, which when I did when Dynamic Manga comes out, you'll see one of the chapters when they go back and forth with each other. I had a ball doing both of them.
Oh, nice.
And having them, and it was almost like I was listening to it, I was like, I'm doing both of these guys, and they're having a conversation with each other.
Right.
So it was just, and they're very different.
Right.
So you'll all get to see that, and it's gonna be really, really fun.
I didn't even really think about that. When you have to do both voices, do you record them at the same time? Or
No,
I
definitely
you have
have
to
to.
take, because you.
Yeah.
What's your process?
Well, you know what? When I was playing around with the one scene that was in it's the final chapter of Volume 1.
Yeah.
Where they kind of spoiler kind of run into each other. So I as practice I did play them. I did go back and forth. But when I properly wanted to do the lines, I did it like individually, just to make sure, because you do have to get into the mode of the character, and it's very hard. Like you might see me do TikTok challenges, things like that, where I have to on the fly switch characters and stuff like that, and they'll do these challenges for different actors. But it's very hard to do that. Like to pick one character and one voice, sometimes you have to go into a mode. And I when we do table read sometimes for the podcast that I'm on, it's not a podcast. It's this is the podcast that I'm on, but the audio drama that I'm on, the Call of the Flame, and when we do a tape read, some of my co-workers or my co-actors, castmates, they'd be like, "Give me a second, I gotta get in."
Oh yeah,
get into character.
Yeah.
Stuff,
actually, in fact, one of my castmates on there, Zach Zathian, he plays my character Genko's partner, Iticus, and he plays Jeffin on Gogoganzi Dynamic Manga.
Nice.
So if they're two very different characters. He's playing like this elf with this like kind of accent. Well, they all have accent, but kind of like a European accent.
Yes. Yeah.
And he plays this older man, this older gentleman in Jeffin, who's sort of a country accent. So.
Let's see, what's old Jeffin doing here? He's getting kind of crusty because Obasi is being being a bad child. Can't believe this boy.
He's very talented.
Wow.
But yeah, he has this when we get ready to go over lines, he's like, all right, give me a second. I gotta and he'll go on mute or whatever if we're doing it, because we're all doing it virtually. And he's like, I gotta say these lines.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Getting the Mo to be, Idicus, and then I'm pretty sure the same thing happens when he's playing
Interesting.
Jeffin.
Yo, that's so weird to think about too, because I've listened to Call of the Flame, and that shows how talented they are. I didn't realize he was both.
Yeah.
Because he sounds so different.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's a kind of a European, it's a little bit posh, a little bit proper,
The rolling of the tongue.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. But with Jeffin, he's country.
Yeah, he's
real
country.
country.
And it's really impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, from the laughing to the and also he's playing an older gentleman.
Yeah,
so that's,
right. And even the age kind of comes across. He doesn't sound young.
Yeah,
it was kind of funny because when I initially kind of just asked him, like, you want to try this out, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't know what he was gonna come up with, but it is easier for me to cast people that I kind of know versus, and just if you want to play around with it, like it may or may not work for you. Yeah. We'll see what happens, right? Yeah. And he did it, and then I automatically in my mind it was just kind of like, oh yeah, he got it. Like, it was like, but I forgot that we were doing this on his trial thing because he blew it away. So it was like, oh yeah, this is him, right? And then when I was talking to him, he was like, no, wait, I thought I was trying out. Oh no, you got it, bro. Like you got it. Like let's move on to now here are the lines and here's the rate.
Hey, when it's good like that, it's good.
Go for it.
Now, like when I'm reading it, that's
his voice.
Yeah.
No, I definitely do the same thing, and now continuing to draw that, I'm gonna be like writing it with his his voice in mind. So
I think that's like the ultimate compliment to to do the dynamic manga and for me to cast and be a voice myself. Absolutely. And to you guys who wrote it and edited it, and to y'all to be like, hey, this is it.
It's perfect. I mean, you guys already told the story, so I don't need to rehash. You can go back and watch episode 1 for that. But seriously, when we watched it the first time, like, we were kind of almost in tears because it's crazy when you put something together that you have it in your head, but to see someone actually do it full on, exactly how you imagined it. You know what I mean?
And better,
and better than you imagined, because it was so immersive, and like it's something that we just didn't even know was coming. That's like such an incredible experience. I honestly don't think anyone, I shouldn't say anyone, but I think it would be very hard to mimic that exact experience, because most of the time when you write something, you're gonna direct part of it, or you're gonna like kind of have us say, we had no idea it was happening.
Right.
So it was complete surprise. It was like the best, like, if you have like a birthday surprise, like a shocker. It was amazing.
I was very nervous upon letting out here for the first time, and then you were the first person who reacted to it. That you were like, hey, I'm gonna get Andrew. We're gonna watch it together. I'm just gonna
because I started watching it. And I was like, and I got lost in it. I was like,
you stopped.
I had to force myself to stop because I was like, I just cannot watch this without him.
Yeah, of course.
I can't continue to ruin my genuine surprise by watching it ahead of him. So I had to force myself to stop. And I remember exactly where I stopped, because I was literally like on what would have been the equivalent of page 4. Yeah. And I was like, man, I gotta shut this off. And like I was waiting for him to get home, but
so that was chapter 1 basically, and that will be episode 1 on the dynamic manga version.
Absolutely. Definitely check out for that. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be really, really good.
So it was like when you were editing it, obviously Jeffin is one of the ones that's like distinct, like you made was there anyone else in particular that stands out that you were trying to really like make his tone
so
or his or her tone?
So Senzo was a tough one for me. Actually, I shouldn't say tough. I feel like Jeffin was tougher because I'm not from the South, so I had to really think about what would people say and how do you spell it? And Andrew's from the South, so like certain things I had to have him say it out loud, and then I was like phonetically spelling
Well,
it.
the interesting thing is you didn't have to necessarily choose to make him that way either. And y'all decided to go that route.
We didn't have to, but I just...
No, the reason I say it, because his look, right, he can be
he could
this... He can be a lot of things with that look.
That's
It
true.
does fit the Southern look.
It does, yeah.
The Southern villager look, but he also could play him as the kind of like, I talk like this, you know, if you want to.
Yeah.
You could have played him that way, but
Definitely.
the fact that you played him that way, you know, this more country kind of, you know, and then the comical way. Playing him.
Right.
I thought one of the things that stand out to me is like, and I got it right away, and I wanted to definitely portray that. Everything I do, I want to portray. Like when he's saying, you know, how back in his day,
Yeah.
like Senzo's just kind of calm, like
yeah. They're like, I'm sure they did.
sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And again, so, and it's funny you mentioned
Go buy
that.
Go Ganzi
Yeah.
in stores now, moonlightstudios.com.
Yeah. It's funny because like we're genuinely excited about it,
Yeah.
so we gush over it. But like it was funny that you say that, like you didn't have to play that, but in my mind, for the overall story, he had to be really kind of backwater, not just regular country, but kind of backwater country, kind of like in the boonies kind of country. And I felt like if I knew more people that like were like even more boony-ish, not just regular Southern, but like real country folks, I could have even used more of that. And the reason for that was because we don't get to see it that much, or really, actually no, not at all in volume 1, but in volume 2 we're gonna see the kingdom, and the kingdom scenes are very a stark contrast from where they are in the story. And even in some of the flashback sequences with, if you've read the book, with Mira, she's even from a different village, but more of a country environment, and it's a very different environment than the kingdom and the, you know, kind of metropolis city that they're in. And that's also why, so to me, I really wanted to show that like Obasi's kind of hiding out, you know, like when we meet him, we are seeing him kind of living his most free and authentic self. And when you're reading the book, you have no reason to think that would be different from where he actually was raised. But when we do see that in volume 2, you're gonna see like, oh wow, like this was, we walked into his escapism moment. We walked into him having the moment we all live in books of like, oh, I'm free. I get to do what I want. Like, yeah, I make jokes about having to chop firewood and having to do this and having to do that, but at the end of the day, he's getting to just like, you know, hang out with a girl he likes, and there's a friend in town that's like cool and giving him advice, and like, you know, he's getting to be a lot freer than he is in the city, how he was raised in a very strict and very regimented military environment, you know, and again in a city environment too. So Jeffin had to be country for me, because it showed, when you meet more characters, you're like, oh, these people are real different from the rest of the characters you meet. And you kind of already start to see that when Cassian and Xochitl come in, because Xochitl and Cassian are characters that you'll see in the story, and they already talk different. You know what I mean? Like, and you're not even getting to know that much about them.
You do sense that they're from somewhere a little bit more like a city or north, a little bit more educated, better educated.
A little bit better educated, a little bit more worldly.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yes,
Worldly,
and Xochitl, I think, especially because like Cassian's a hothead, so there's still a little bit like fun and free about his personality. But with Xochitl, she's so refined and regal, kind of elegant and reserved and very thoughtful with how she speaks and what she says, and you know, it's just different. And again with Senzo, that he's the epitome of that. He's like very posh and very polished. He actually, when I wrote him, when a lot of the time when Andrew will write the first pass and I'll edit it, and we'll do the storyboarding and I'll edit it. We go through a lot of passes back and forth, especially for preparing the book for print. We did even more passes. But it was really important to me that Senzo never uses contractions ever. Senzo will never, if you see it in a future book, I made a mistake.
Or Willow was editing.
Like,
what is this?
Right, yeah. Like, Senzo would never say I'm. He would never say, going. He never drops a syllable. He never drops a consonant. He never.
Now that gives me more as an actor to know where it comes from.
It's it's almost a little bit robotic. And again, in a
there's
future,
there's
a reason. There's a
method
reason
to that.
why
There's
he
a method
is
to that
so
madness.
almost robotic, almost like someone speaking for him. If that gives you a little, So
no, that's good.
But
no, it's
again,
excited.
if you guys can't tell, we've really built this world out.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it was fun because a lot of creations, especially for like artists, writers, like they have all this stuff kind of stuck in their head, and so to kind of like voice it out to someone, and actually I wanted to, because comics and manga, especially both of us coming from the comic world and stuff like that, like the style of like how we sort of approach this,
different.
What was
I was actually gonna ask that. That's a good question.
That's
coming from being a comic book for most of your life, then kind of what did you want to bring from there, and then what did you want to obviously it's important to Moonlair to preserve a lot of things that are very uniquely that manga style, that Japanese manga style, but then also you have a brain of an American and Western, and there's certain things you want tied, and you're a completionist. There's things certain things have to make sense. So you have to bring that, you know.
And again, so it's funny because
I'm so sorry not to overload. One thing that you're gonna notice is she's gonna remember all these questions, so I don't feel bad about overloading her with questions. Also,
put me on spot.
no, because also I wanted to ask, because there's a lot of things like that, me and Okami are from that generation of like Rama 1/2, like all these older tropes that, Michelle getting into, anime kind of later. Some of these tropes don't exist. Like, when you did see some of these tropes, did you kind of understand them? If you did understand them, did they make sense to you? So do you remember all those questions?
I do. So I'm going to answer them in order because again, I like chronological stuff. So first, actually that's a big thing. If any of you guys know me personally, I'm a talker, but the reason is because I feel like giving you the history or giving you more information gives you context. So I feel like that's going to get answered as part of something else I was going to say. So first off, again, we were going through the timeline of us being together, us reading manga and anime. As soon as I watched Samurai Champloo, I started to understand why people like manga. And one of the reasons why I like manga and why I feel like it is different from Western comics is there is a lot in manga where they take a concept that you feel like is so out there and doesn't make any sense, and you're like, why on earth does this boy got like stringy arms? What's happening? But then they and that's just an example, but then they basically take that concept and tell you a really heartfelt character developing story through what would have been a really wacky concept. Like, I think a lot of people that think shonen is silly, and again, I'm speaking from experience, because when I was a kid, I didn't want to do anything anime. I watched some Sailor Moon, I watched Pokemon. That was really truly the extent of my childhood experience with anime. So because it just seemed wacky and it seemed too far out there. But then once I started really watching it as an adult, I was like, wow, these characters have a lot of depth. And even when maybe in some of the shows where you think it's kind of shallower, there is the artists and the writers are trying to still give depth, even when it seems like it's a wild story. And I think for a lot of people that have read manga and watched anime their entire lives, some of those tropes and some of those kind of character developing ideas like can feel tired. But for me, they were fresh. I was watching them in 2014 for the first time. And it's funny that you mentioned about the tropes and did I understand them and some of the concepts. I was, obviously I was raised in a primarily Puerto Rican household. Not that my dad was not present, but my mom's culture is just overwhelming with that. But the outside area, like most of where I spent most of my formative childhood, the area had mostly turned to like a lot of Chinese immigrants and a lot of Russian immigrants as well, but primarily Chinese. I grew up, a lot of my friends in my neighborhood were Chinese. And so Chinese and Japanese culture are very different, but there is some crossover. And so there are some tropes in anime that aren't necessarily the same as Chinese culture, but there's something that feels familiar to me.
I get it.
Yeah.
Same, I feel like that same with like Japanese and Korean.
Yes.
Certain things are just gonna.
There's just certain things.
Yeah.
There's just certain things that the cultures share.
And that's just from an outside person looking in.
Yeah.
I mean, they could. If y'all have people want to fight me on that's different, but like, I get what you're saying.
And to be honest, again, I mean, obviously you can have your own opinions about certain things, but how I correlated it always as a kid was, being Puerto Rican, there's a lot of things we eat that Dominicans eat, that Cubans eat, that Mexicans eat.
Right.
That, we all have a version of a something wrapped with meat inside. Like, and I know that sounds like, oh, well, it doesn't everybody, but like, we have a lot of similar flavors. There's a lot of like, I was talking about this with my aunt about like, we use sofrito. That's something that all Caribbean people use. They just might not use that word. And that's the same thing with, or similar thing with Chinese and Japanese and Korean culture. They have some shared history, and so they have some shared food, clothing, music. There's something there that's like, okay, maybe it's not the same, and I would never call them the same because they're definitely not. And that's even just me being an outsider looking in, but there's certain things that felt a little bit like home. It felt like I was walking into my, childhood friend's house and her mom was making, food for us, and it would be, ramen, and we're eating with chopsticks. Like a lot of that eating on the floor, a lot of those cultural things that are similar, but not the same, but it felt familiar. The tropes that were like different to me that I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a trope were like, like the running to school, like, or being late for school with a piece of toast in the mouth. That's one of Andrew's classic feeling tropes. To me, because I was starting so late in the game, it felt fresh.
I think a lot of stuff's gonna feel fresh just because some of them aren't used anymore.
Right. And that's another thing too, kind of going back to your question about editing, when I like to do, if you haven't figured it out, I like to do my research. I never feel like I'm an expert in anything. I feel like I always have room to learn. And that's kind of the policy I take, or the approach I take with editing manga. A lot of times when Andrew's working on a certain story, I will read mangas similar in style. Like, when we were doing Go Oganzi, I read a lot of not just shonen, but I also read a lot of fantasy. I read a lot of just coming to age stories, a lot of magical relation stories.
Which led to Fairy Tale.
Which led to me loving Fairy Tale. Which again,
I tried. I was like, yo.
So Fairy Tale's a great example of how, like, a lot of people will feel like shonen is very shallow. But for me, being an outsider looking in, I was like, this has a lot of like character building, and it has a lot of like, this kid is trying to make the best of a situation, and like there's a lot of elements in there that I feel like I get how people can think it's just like a shallow like action story, but there are those moments between the characters where they bond, And I think it's not the best example. I think there's other shonens that do it better. But for me, it was a super bingeable show. And also just because it also kind of had a little bit of that Justice League team up element, you know, where like it's all these characters, we're coming together for a cause, we're gonna beat the bad guy. I love those types of stories where you have different characters and different archetypes coming together for a common good, you know. That's a universal story that I don't think just Western and comics and manga have told.
Yeah, I think with Fairy Tail, you know, to bring it back to like dynamic manga is, I think Fairy Tail is one of the examples of those who I think it's a good manga, but I do think I felt like it wasn't translated visually.
Oh yes.
To anime is properly.
I agree.
If you look at the pages of Fairy Tail, it looks, the fights are gritty and it's really cool looking. And I think they use this soft animation, and it's just like it just doesn't feel as intense as it. Like if I ever read the manga, maybe I could watch it. But knowing, you know, I was reading the manga, and then first. So I think when I say use it as dynamic manga, it's like we would retain the quality of that manga, and you would throw voices on it and sound effects, so you would get that immersion feel, and you wouldn't lose that, you know. But that's an example with dynamic mangas. But I do like Fairy Tail. I also like the fact that they took a thing like magic and made everything. They made it so many different types of magic. I thought that was pretty cool.
So. And I love that. And again, now having watched and read a lot of things, I've realized that it wasn't the only manga that's an anime that's done that. But I did love that aspect of it. It wasn't just elemental magic. It wasn't just
it was everything.
Thing. It was everything. I mean, honestly, Lucy with the keys. To me, it's funny because like a lot of people like, oh yeah, you didn't. I
was like, because like after the first arc was done, I was like, oh okay, so the show is over.
No,
and then
there's so much
another
more.
one, and then I watched that one and was like, how long are we gonna keep this going? Because like they've defeated almost everybody, and then once they defeat someone else will step out of the shadows and be like, you know, I guess we have to take it to them this time.
I think that's one of those old things I like if you want to keep it going. But it has to. They did that in Sailor Moon.
That's true. No, I feel it. It's just, but I felt like they took their time with Sailor Moon. Like I felt like they spent a long time on. I forgot the first villain, but when she was like creating all these different monsters, it felt like with Fairy Tail, it was like one season after another. I mean, it felt like it was like like 30 episodes.
What,
I feel like if you analyze any, that's another thing I was going to ask you about, because like I said, you're coming from Western. There are certain things about Japanese style manga that you kind of just gotta, you don't want to overanalyze, right? Because you like, there's a lot with Sailor Moon that I could watch, and there's a lot of holes I can post, a lot of questions I can come up with. But sometimes you don't ask questions. You just, it is. They can time travel. I'm not used to saying Sailor Moon, but I'm just using an example. They can time travel. They can do this. And you don't always have to ask why. But there has to be a balance of certain things need to get explained, and then it's kind of like, well, when do we explain it too? Like sometimes you don't explain stuff till way later. You don't want to give too much in the beginning.
And it's so funny that you mentioned that, because like, well, and I will say kind of two things about it. So one, I have been listening to this podcast and I really, really love it. But what I think is so funny about it is that one guy, like, is a hardcore weeb. He calls himself this. It's not like a diss. He's a hardcore weeb. He's into everything. He's watched it all. He knows some Japanese. And then the other one doesn't watch any anime except for the anime he's referred to here. It's and what I think is interesting is a lot of times they will get referrals and people will tell them, oh, I think he'll really like this, you should watch it. And then he hates it, and I was like, honestly, as someone
who's the worst feeling in the world.
And
first one
but it's funny because he brings up such good points. I'm like, I totally get why you didn't like this, because you really analyzed it. And I think sometimes with anime, in order to enjoy it, you have to suspend your disbelief. And that's something I've always like kind of enjoyed about just in general things. Like I'm kind of optimistic about stuff. I'll be able to find the good in most things. Like people will hate something and I'm like, but it wasn't all bad.
I laugh at it too because I'm obviously a big pro wrestling fan. Y'all know that.
Right.
They may not, but
now you know.
Watching it with somebody who can't suspend their disbelief sometimes, it's like, oh my, why is he just
yeah.
standing? You know, so you gotta sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Well, in the beginning, so after Dragon Ball Z, because again, Michelle asked a lot of questions, like well, who is that?
I started asking a lot of questions in the beginning.
And I'm so glad that Michelle got over this, because one of my favorite animes and one of my favorite mangas is Baki the Grappler,
and I love that.
In the beginning, she was like, "Wait, why? Wait, hold on. Yeah, no, who? Yeah, who are these people? And why are they like why is he able to rip things out and stuff like that?
Well, okay,
but now, like she can be like, oh snap, the finger strength. So there's this character that has like really strong grip, and like he's hanging his whole body weight by like a penny and stuff like that. Yeah. And he's holding it, and we're both now enjoying it. We're like, yo, this is. But I've been doing that for years. But I'm like, yo, this is it.
And again, I feel like part of for me is I need context. I need to know what kind of show this is. I need to know how wacky is it. Like, I kind of need to know some things before I can go into it, because if I'm thinking it's one thing and then it's another, then I have a lot of questions. Yeah. And that was the problem with Baki, was that we had also watched Fist of the North Star, which I loved. Sure. But Fist of the North Star is a lot more grounded. There is obviously some typical anime, like overpowered, random, crazy fight, but a lot of it, either they're just kind of all strong and we don't talk about why, whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But with Baki, sometimes when they would talk for so long about these things, I was like, do they have superpowers? Yeah. Are they metahumans? What are we? Is this a fighting anime? Is this like a My Hero Academia type of thing? Like, not in terms of tone, but in terms of like, I just didn't know, are they superpowers?
I always looked at it as just the next level of martial art.
It is, yeah.
Right, and once I got that, I'm like, okay, cool.
Well, coming from, again, older animes, like you you got past like the like it's actually a superpower that they are human and they have no superpower. Yeah. So, because they'd be like, an average human can hold their breath for like 30 seconds. He can hold it for 10 hours. Right. And you're like, you
gonna die. Yeah. But that's actually something too that I think is, because you were talking about tropes. What were some tropes that I knew? What ones I didn't know? Something that's different between Japanese and Chinese culture, or at least to my knowledge, and something I had never been exposed to, was I didn't understand that ninjas like had superpowers. Like the whole thing of like, because I hadn't watched Naruto, I couldn't get through it. I didn't know that they kind of each, like, to me, I would call them superpowers, but it's their like ninja art. Right. Yeah, right. Until we watched Basilisk, which is an old anime. If you haven't watched it, it's amazing. Definitely, phenomenal.
They have a live action version of it, so they call it something else.
It's like Shinobi Love or something. Yeah, Shinobi Love.
Oh, we not watched that.
I was just about to say a spoiler, but
yeah. Oh, okay. But in that one, you could tell Michelle was reverting back to her asking questions.
Because I had a lot of questions.
Be like, wait, do they have superpowers? I'm like, no, it's a ninja thing. Again, he was like, ninjas do that? What is that?
Yeah, it's not just ninjas. It's martial arts in itself is like learning a superpower. Right. In a lot of those older or even newer animes.
But again, because coming from a martial arts background, I was like, I can't fly. I can't turn into a spider. Yeah. Like, I can't summon animals. And if you haven't watched, my hair doesn't whip out like Medusa and strangle people. Which again, if you never watched Basilisk, you should watch it. But I was like, that seems like a superpower thing. That's like, especially the hair guy, because all I could think of was Medusa from the Marvel characters.
And
right? So I was
and the other thing that, so just so I can kind of so I can place myself into her shoes. I always looked at them as just being like martial arts.
Yeah.
I equivalent them with martial arts, but only recently that people would be like, oh, these are like shinobi spells. This is actually magic, which puts a different spin on like, oh, that's interesting. Like these are, yeah. So so ninja arts is like when they do the things, that's basically like
seals.
Yeah, seals and like casting spells and stuff like that. So
Okay,
it changes the whole thing
explains
depending on the narration that you're listening to and stuff like that. Because again, when we were growing up, it was just martial arts. Like
Well, there was a part of the Fatal Fury movies, when the ads, with the old manga ads, they said, one of the things that they said was, I don't know why I remember this. Well, it stuck with me because that's how I think about, like, if I was writing a story, it would say, it's the 21st century and the most powerful weapon is still the human body.
In an age of scientific wonders, the human body is still the world's most dangerous machine.
So it was kind of like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't an exact quote, but it was basically
in that same
same
vein of thinking.
yeah.
Again, and that makes sense when you put all that together. Again, because I love magical stories. I love like every form of magic that's ever anything remotely mystical. That's why Dr. Fate, going back to DC for a minute, they did my Dr. Fate dirty in the movie, and I was mad because I was excited about Pierce Brosnan because I love Pierce Brosnan. They did him dirty, but now knowing that concept of it kind of being a magical component, that explains everything. All you gotta say is it's magic. Magic explains everything.
So, this conversation could go on forever. As you see, we have a lot of information, a lot of things to talk about between the three of us. But we don't want to take up too much of your time in one sitting. So we will come back with a part two. And we'll have our guests, our producers, will be back in front of the camera once again.
Producer, editor, all that stuff.
Other stuff.
Yeah.
Other stuff.
But we're gonna end up. What is the goal for Moonlair from your perspective?
The goal for Moonlair, I mean, we have a lot of goals, but I would say the primary thing is for us to tell great stories and just put out as much content as we possibly can. And honestly, that's a balancing act within itself because, you want to put just want to put stuff out. Like we have so much stuff that we're excited about, so many things that we're building, so many characters and worlds and everything. But you also want it to be good quality. And I think that's something we're going to probably talk about on part 2. What is indie? What does it mean to be an indie company? What does it mean to be an indie manga company? And so we're trying to put out as much high quality stuff as we can, stuff that we hope that you guys will enjoy, but also tell the stories that we're excited about because like we've been talking about all this podcast, Go Ganzi was Andrew's first story, but as we very quickly realized, like almost like that, realized it was gonna be more. And the more I saw the vision, the more involved I got, the more we did things like AK Yumi. So we're trying to just bring you guys as much as we can. That's the main goal.
And there's a lot of, and there's going to be some titles that Michelle is going to be working on, like as a creator, as a writer. So she has a couple of projects that looking forward to it. So yeah,
very excited about all these products and the dynamics mangas to come with all of these products.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
So folks, go to moonlairstudios.com for more information and purchase Gogo Ganzi as well as other products like the Gogo Ganzi poster
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you get the stickers where you got the interdimensional cat girl Namiko.
Yeah.
Definitely.
There's a QR code in there. You can go and you can actually read a mini comic. Mini manga, excuse me.
Absolutely. And also, we're going to be putting out a digital magazine called the V Series. So definitely look out for that. It's going to be coming up, I want to say, next month?
Yeah.
We'll be putting that out. So we got a lot of
That's
really
very
cool
soon.
stuff. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. A lot of information in there, a lot of content. So definitely pick that up. And yeah, we just hope that you guys enjoy what we're doing. From manga to dynamic manga to other things, the merch too. Yeah, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah. Part 2 coming soon.
Yes,
Episode 5, and we have some guests coming as well.
Yes.
exactly.
So stay tuned for that.
So,
and
yeah.
until next time, guys, later days.
And cool stuff.
And I have no
You
line.
gotta say, you have to say that with confidence. You have to say,
And cool summers.
Very
All right,
sultry.
Peace.
Take it easy.
Bye.